So good morning, everyone. Lots of weather checking going on. Yeah, as Vajradevi said, we got snow in Shrewsbury, rather wet snow, and occasionally that means that you might hear it, which can be quite nice when we're meditating, just hearing the rain, or occasionally the squirrels or the pigeons tapping on the roof. Little soundtrack going along. So lovely to see you all again, and a couple of new faces who perhaps weren't able to come last night. And so this morning, well, first off, I'm just going to hand over to Vajradevi just for a couple of practical things, and then we'll come back and I'll introduce the theme of the retreat more fully. So over to you, Vajradevi.
Yes, just a couple of practical things. Sorry. Just getting back in the hand of sharing a space together. So two practical things. One is to do with the groups which are happening this afternoon at 4 o'clock. So if you have reviews, then you'll be in a group with your review leader. And in order to join in with that, please log in at 3:45. You can just join this link, the main Zoom link. Just log in, and then you can mute yourself, turn off your video, go away, make a cup of tea, and that will give me time to allocate you to the correct group. If you're not having reviews, then you're still welcome to come in and check in. These are check-in groups. It would very much help me if you give me a message or an email beforehand to let me know. I've only heard from one person in that category so far. So either we will put you in with one of the existing groups, or we'll give you a group to yourself for people not having reviews. And then in terms of the reviews, yes, please, if you haven't already signed up for reviews and you've been allocated a reviewer, then please can you do that? Well, today would be ideal, and then we can see if there's any spaces left. Hopefully you found out how to do that. You go to the main website, you've got the link for that, and if you scroll down there, you'll find the link to sign up for your reviews. Any questions, email me or chat, give a direct chat during the session. Okay from me.
Okay, just realized one thing that may not be completely clear, and that's partly because of sometimes on online retreats, the groups happen right through the retreat. And just to say that in case it's not clear, that is not happening this retreat. There's a group at the beginning and at the end of the retreat, and on all the other days in between are reviews. Yeah, so just so that's clear. So this retreat, the title of which, the Beautiful Mind and Uncontrived Mindfulness, it's a slightly unwieldy title, but really this is pointing at the basis of what I always offer on retreats is uncontrived mindfulness. It's mindfulness as a wisdom path, insight path, based on the Satipatthana Sutta, drawing from the Satipatthana Sutta. But out of that come different expressions, if you like, or perhaps sometimes other teachings that that work really well with this sort of foundation teaching, and in this case, the Five Spiritual Faculties, and bringing those together with some of the Satipatthana teachings. And as I said last night, particularly the faculty of mindfulness and wisdom, those two forming the basis for everything that we do this week. So I sometimes talk about the uncontrived mindfulness aspect as watching our minds, just very simply watching the mind. And some of you will have heard me say this before, but I remember being delighted hearing Bhante introduce an order member from Germany on a convention a number of years ago, an order convention. And as part of his introduction, he said, we should be watching our minds all the time. And I just thought, yes, because that's very much in line with what I'm trying to practice myself, and also just always trying to communicate. So whatever we're doing, whether we're sitting, walking, lying down, whatever formal practice we're doing, but also informally throughout our daily chores, our work, our personal care, exercising, eating, whatever you can think of. If you like, the primary thing is the awareness, is the ability to recognize not just what we're doing. In a sense, perhaps that's more familiar. We recognize what we're doing, recognize the activities or the objects of awareness, recognize perhaps the body in its movements, but actually the continuity of mindfulness is also continuity of watching the mind, in a way, watching how we relate to those activities, how we relate to those experiences, what else is going on. So one of the questions we can ask is, what's the quality of the mind in any moment, So just tuning in, checking in with ourselves on quite a regular basis. And using this framework of the faculties, the five spiritual faculties, we can say, what faculties are present in this moment? Which ones are absent? Is there a sense of balance amongst those faculties? And we can use mindfulness, use awareness, and I'll be using those two words synonymously, to check in with ourselves throughout the day, throughout different activities and practices. And that checking in is very light. As you see, it's not a sort of heavy conceptual going through each of the faculties. It's a bit lighter, a bit more intuitive. And we do this from a very receptive, settled back, like settling back into a mental armchair, if you like, to watch the mind and body. And we're cultivating a quality of mind that overall has more of the flavors of awareness and wisdom and the other faculties, faith, energy, and stability of mind. And through cultivating that quality of mind, we're setting up the conditions for a mind that's, if you like, it affects our ethical life, but it also affects our meditative life, and so the quality of samadhi or stability. But it also, we're setting up the conditions for wisdom to arise in the mind. Conditions for deeper seeing, deeper, clearer seeing. So I want to say a little bit about the faculties historically, sort of set them within the context of the Buddhist tradition, very, very briefly. So in the time of the Buddha, apparently the faculties were all practiced equally, they're practiced together. But gradually, over time, different schools of Buddhism started to specialize. And we can see that in the different schools. So for example, the Yogacharans had quite a they specialize quite strongly on concentration, the meditative attainments. So samadhi, focused on the samadhi faculty. And then the Abhidharma and the Madhyamika schools focused quite strongly. They were known as the wisdom schools. So that was where they went, and they took wisdom in a particular direction. Just getting very, very, very clear about certain states of mind. And then there were the Pure Land schools a bit later, and they specialized faith and devotional practices. So I think we can see some of that specialization happening today. It's happened through the 2,500 years since the time of the Buddha. But in the modern day, you've got the Theravada schools, I think both in the East, but also in the West. There's quite a lot of work. There's quite a lot of emphasis on work, but also meditation and particularly mindfulness. And then you've got more generally, you've got mindfulness as a faculty that's given a lot of attention in the modern day Vipassana traditions. And again, that's East, but it's also very much in the West too. And all the mindfulness schools that have come into a more secular, application. Their applications are more secular through health, through all sorts of ways that mindfulness has been seen as helpful in different conditions. And I was thinking about us. I was thinking about Triratna, and I think generally, we're fairly, we in a sense gone back to the Buddha in the all-round tradition. I think perhaps we've had more of a focus on study and perhaps the wisdom emphasis, and less on the meditation. But I think that's becoming more balanced out, as I'm sure in traditions that will be the case. So this word for faculty, it's Indriya, and this is drawn from Indra, the ruler of the gods, and it means, Indriya means governing or controlling principle or faculty. So I want to draw a bit from what Bhante's written in What is the Dharma, under this section, the pattern of life and work, which some of you may have read as I put it in the letter, but I'll just say a few things about that section. So one of the things that I found most interesting is that this word Indriya is not just used for the spiritual faculties, but also for the sense faculties. So our 5 physical senses in particular, our life as we know it generally is governed and controlled through our physical senses, the sense that what we touch, what we taste, what we hear, what we see, and the mind sense of what we think, what we remember, the faculties of that we engage with and enjoy, and we do enjoy our thinking quite a lot of the time. So we find our way around our world with our physical senses, our physical sense and the mind sense, and we act on impulses stimulated by our senses. And our senses play a major part in the conditioning of our likes and dislikes. And they also they pull us into action. We're pulled by them, they drive us into action. And they're also quite a major part of how we identify as a person, as a self, if you like, through our the smells that I do or I don't like, my eyesight. I've got poor hearing. What I'm tasting, what I'm touching. So our sense of self is very sort of intimately bound up with the sense, with our senses, these governing and controlling principles or faculties. And Bhante says in What is the Dharma, he says that largely we're functioning on this plane, the psychophysical plane of the Indriyas. They govern and control our mundane life. And he says they're fully functioning. And he contrasts this with the second set of Indriyas, the spiritual faculties, faith, energy, wisdom, concentration or stability, and mindfulness. And he, rather than these being fully functioning, he said these are embryonic. And the task in the spiritual life is to develop these qualities, these spiritual faculties. So in a sense, we lessen our reliance and our identification with the physical Indriyas, and we develop and cultivate these embryonic spiritual faculties. But of course, we don't leave our sense faculties behind. They're absolutely essential. We can't function without them. We need them to navigate through our world and our life, and they give us many opportunities to experience beauty and pleasure, a certain sort of vividness in life, through nature, through the arts, through music. But we need to have them in balance. Otherwise, I think as it's human nature, we tend to prioritize ease, prioritize comfort, go with what we like. And then what happens, this is Sayadaw U Tejaniya, the teacher I sit with in Burma at times. And he says, then relaxation and pleasure take the place of the 5 spiritual faculties. So we have to keep them in balance. When there's only pleasure, when we go to that extreme, then we have hedonism. But I think we can watch out for the general that general impulse towards ease or towards comfort in relation to the senses, and just check in. What's our motivation for doing something? Getting a sense of that very natural and very deep-rooted tendency towards avoiding discomfort and seeking out some sort of pleasure or comfort. So I think we can see this in meditation. We can see it just when we're sitting. Perhaps there's a slight discomfort, and so we'll straighten up, or we'll uncross our legs. We'll do something just to because there's been a discomfort that perhaps we haven't consciously noticed, but there's a move away from it towards comfort. Or perhaps there's a light shining in our eyes, and again we'll just move to avoid the discomfort of it. And it's not that moving isn't a helpful thing to do, but what we do when we do it without awareness, then we don't realize we miss an opportunity to see that move away from discomfort and towards pleasure. And that reinforces our identification with the senses, with our sense experience. So all that's needed is to be aware. And then in those moments, there's a sense of, oh, could I stay with this? Could I stay with this discomfort? Yeah, discomfort is part of life. Is it always necessary to move away from it? So a big part of the mindfulness faculty is being able to be present to what's happening without immediately seeking to change it in some way, or to either move towards something or move away from something. So Ayakema, an old friend of Bante's before her death, I think in the late 90s, 1990s, she talked about how we need spiritual equivalents to our sense pleasures in order to lessen our reliance on sense pleasures. So that might be the pleasure of a really concentrated mind, the pleasure of jhana. It might be a sense of slightly more subtle pleasure of the balance of the equanimous mind, or the mind that's just very present, open to what's happening. We might find that sort of spiritual pleasure within communication, or within our work, being really, really wholehearted in what we're doing. But perhaps another question is where are our equivalents, if you like, to sense pleasure? Where do we find the pleasure in our practice? And I think often it can be a mixture. We don't need to sort of get to we don't need to polarize around what's a spiritual activity, if you like, and what's a worldly activity. For me, being by the sea is immensely rewarding and pleasurable, and that's partly on a really sensory basis. I love doing walking meditation while paddling. That's one of my favorite things to do. But it's not just about feeling the cold water or the sun, or it's about often being alone and having not overstimulating my mind, so that there's a much more reflective, aware quality of mind, which is very enjoyable just for its own sake. So I'm sure you have your own examples of that sort of thing, where we find a pleasure, a deep pleasure of satisfaction, or I remember Analayo, the Bhikkhu Analayo, talking about the pleasure of the present moment. It's a subtle pleasure, but once you notice it, it's quite compelling, actually. Just this is so simple, so natural, but very rewarding. So I want to be really clear. This is not about denying, and it's not nihilism, but it is about balance. Ayakema also says pleasure will arise because we have our physical senses, but we don't want to make pleasure our guiding principle, the basis on which we do things. And to avoid that, we need to be aware of why we're doing something, what the motivation is. So perhaps rather than pleasure being the guiding principle or motivation, how would it be to what's helpful for practice? What's helpful for practice in this moment? How would it be for that to be, if you like, the compass that we're sort of oriented towards, pointing north, that point of What was helpful in this moment for practice? So we use our senses to support practice rather than to get lost in them. In this context, I quite often remember each day when I was on retreat in Burma, and I was there for quite a number of months on a number of occasions, and you say this, you chant this grace before meals. You get 2 meals a day, you chant this grace, and there's an English translation alongside the Burmese words, and basically it's saying that this food is freely given. It's given by the monastery. You don't pay to be there. Everything is on a dana basis. Some of the food is given by the locals when the monks go on alms round every morning. So it's all been given, and some of it's been given by people who have very, very little. Burma's incredibly poor, and yet people will give as much as they can to support, not only to support the monks and nuns, but to support people like me who are there to practice because they so sort of respect and wish to support you practicing. So it really it made me relate to what I was eating in a different sort of way, and partly through this grace, which reminded me every day this food has been given to support practice. So eat just enough to do that. And it really got me noticing what was enough and where was I being a bit greedy or eating something just because I liked it, because it was a bit of a treat. Yeah, so we can have a sort of different perspective or a different sort of orienting or guiding principle that's more in line with the spiritual faculties rather than in line with our sense desires. So during the next few days, 6 days, we'll do 2 main things. So one is unpack what the spiritual faculties are, particularly in relation to meditation, in relation to how we work with our minds and look to cultivate them individually. And in the evenings, we'll do this through devotional practice. Some evenings that element of ritual or devotion will be very simple, and others it'll be a little bit more a larger part of the evening. So looking to, in a very receptive way, to cultivate these beautiful qualities of heart and mind. So that's the first thing we'll do. But the second thing is just explore our experience from the perspective of mindfulness and wisdom. What happens when we're present to sense experience rather than acting from within it, acting from it? How do we recognize when identification with sense experience is there and when there's been a release of that identification? We're just able to see a sense experience as a sense experience. So bringing the wisdom faculty to bear. Yeah, so I'll introduce various ways of looking, if you like, at that. We can notice on a moment-to-moment basis the quality of the mind, and whether we're noticing one of the faculties or the opposites of the faculties. The fact that we're noticing it, the fact that we're aware of it is the main thing. So just in terms of the program, I think a lot of you have seen it online now. So there'll be these 3 sessions through the day. But I really encourage you to see if you can take awareness into the times in between the different practices, through the different activities. So emphasize a continuity of awareness. And again, this can be very light. It's in a sense just remembering, or when you remember, to just become present, just for that moment, just present to whatever it is that you're doing. And because of the nature of the retreat, and you may be at home on your own, or you may not be, you may be living with other people, so you may well be talking and listening. But even if you are living on your own, you'll be at some points probably talking in reviews or in the groups, or maybe asking a question, and you'll be listening to me. So one of the things that I'd like to encourage you to do is play with that continuity of awareness through talking and listening. Actually, the other opportunity is through the rituals in the evening, especially the call and response aspects. So I think we're very used to, in a way, watching our minds in relation to the speech precepts. Say so from an ethical perspective, we can be aware of what we're saying. In addition to that, I think we can be aware of just knowing that we're talking. If you like, hearing ourselves as we talk, and knowing that hearing is happening, recognizing what the experience of speaking is like. I can feel things happening around my throat. I can feel a certain sort of vibration. There's a lot of physical stuff that happens. I can feel my hands moving around as I speak. So there's a lot that goes on. And talking and listening are places where we often lose awareness. We lose that continuity of awareness. So to the extent that you're talking and listening, just make it practice to prioritize, if you like, the awareness rather than necessarily what you're hearing or what you're saying even. So that's talking, listening. Use whichever posture you find supports awareness. And that will vary at different times, but do feel free to lie down or to stand. We may well do a standing meditation at some point. So when I say a posture that best supports awareness, so it best supports you being present to what's happening. So in a way, we're not looking to, we're not best supporting pleasure, but we want to be at ease. So that may be a lying down position. It may be sitting or leaning against something. Going with the Satipatthana Sutta, and basically the Buddha was saying, take mindfulness into as many moments of your day as possible, through as many activities as possible. So on the recording, there's a link, I think, on the main blog page with all the information that Vajradevi has put up. And there's a link to a YouTube site where there'll be various recordings from these sessions. But there's already one, which is a walking meditation. I think it's an audio. Is it audio, Vajradevi? Yeah, it's an audio link that I recorded a couple of retreats ago. And see how the weather goes, depending on whether it's summer or winter where you are and whether you're able to get out. But I do really encourage you to if you give that little track a listen, you'll see in a way the continuity between the sitting practice and the walking practice. We're doing the same thing, the same quality of continuity of awareness, watching what's happening through the mind and through all the senses. So if you can do that every day, so much the better. And if you can, if your conditions support it this weekend, this week, to support being aware, spend time in between the activities, reducing input as much as you can. If you don't need to do it, how about just sitting, just looking out the window, just simple exercise, having a cup of tea. I probably don't really need to say anything about tech, but I will say a couple of things. Just I find it interesting and I find it helpful to be reminded myself, so I will say. So for many of us, and I recognize it's not everybody, some people have a positive sense of relief when they're in retreat mode and switching off their phones and being disconnected from social media and the news and all those things is a relief. But for many of us, it's not. There's a pull towards that, and we're all needing to use our tech to get online for the retreat. So it's not quite as clear cut as it might be otherwise. So maybe play around, just see what you can do, see if there's times. Maybe you decide, well, this week I'll not look at the news or social media, but I will be checking messages, or in a way, just see what you can do. But really, you can make up your own minds, but I just want to emphasize a couple of things that have been showing up in research. So one of the things which is very, very obvious is just the addictive nature of that one more click, if you like, one more click. Very sophisticated algorithms that are used, and their sole purpose is to get us to make that next click and stay online a bit more. And the research is showing the effects on concentration and the effects on stability of attention, with the mind flitting around a lot. And how that increases the habits of craving and addiction. We have a bit more and then we want a bit more. And there are lots of sort of chemicals that I'm sure you're familiar with. I'm not going to go into the neuroscience of it. So there's that. There's the mind that sort of gets more used to sort of being less settled and more outwardly oriented and flitting around. But the second thing, I think, is that we are apparently in danger of losing the ability to be more deeply alone with ourselves. To rest at ease in our own being, whether that's with others, but particularly in solitude. And when we're deeply connected with ourselves in a quite simple way, then we can become more in touch with our own creativity. There's a little quote by Einstein that I really like. I think it's paraphrased, and I found it in a book, a lovely book about solitude. And apparently Einstein said something like, daydreaming is the mind's only pathway to new ideas. Daydreaming is the mind's only pathway to new ideas. I think there's something perhaps in common with daydreaming and awareness. I hesitate to say that. I don't want you to get the wrong idea or to think, what on earth is she talking about? But I think there's something about the aware mind that is released from doing and trying, that's simply willing to just be present. That is also means that it's more receptive to new ideas, to knowing what it doesn't already know. It's not going down one of its same old pathways. So it's an opportunity to, even when you feel like nothing much is happening, it's an opportunity where the mind, through not following its well-worn habits, it's open for something else to happen. It's like the mind can at times slip loose from its tight moorings, the tight moorings of the sort of habitual, sort of conditioned mind, into spaciousness, into new thoughts, unbidden thoughts that lead to new understandings, new ways of looking at things. So if you like, it's a condition through which the wisdom mind can make itself felt, make itself known. So pretty worthwhile things and pretty important things as practitioners, both that's stability of mind and the receptive mind that's open to new, they're not ideas, are they? Just new experiences. Okay, so that's all I want to say for now. So we're going to try. It's worked before, so hopefully we'll try again. But if anyone perhaps has a question or a comment, we'll just take a few questions or comments. And I don't know, how did we do it last time? I think maybe if you can make it known that you like to say something, and then Vajradevi will keep his eye out because he can look at the different pages.
It's easier if people unmute themselves.
Okay, so he's saying it's easier if you unmute yourselves to make yourself known. Okay, so maybe there aren't for now, that's fine. So what we'll do is just have a couple of minutes leg stretch, and then I'm going to go through perhaps a couple of exercises exploring the senses and our relationship to the senses. So just a couple of minutes leg stretch. Okay, just trying out my bell. So we'll do a couple of short meditations, exploring different senses. And in between the first and the second one, we'll just have a pause. Taradasi, you might just need to mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. And I'll lead through these, and yeah, after the second one, there'll be a chance to perhaps say what's something that you noticed. So it's starting in a very natural way, if you like. I'd like to encourage you to sit just as if you were sitting and not meditating, just in a very natural way. It's very easy for us to have habits and sort of clock into a meditation type of mode. So let the key word be natural. And this might mean that you have your eyes open, at least initially, and it might mean that you're looking at something that's outside your window, or not necessarily looking at your shrine. You're giving yourself time to come to yourself. Initially, there's no particular thing to put your attention on. But there'll still be things that you notice. Sounds, sensations. Things that are seen, heard, and felt. And in the process of noticing sights or sounds, touch sensations, we're doing that from the present moment. Perhaps initially just a few moments we might be inhabiting. Relax into this settling process, allowing it to take the time that it does without our agenda. It should be like this, like that. Awareness can notice this settling process. And awareness can notice the degree to which we feel unsettled, agitated. But the awareness itself emphasizes settling, relaxing, and embodiment. Notice any places of holding. As you settle, come into embodiment. Holding in the legs or the breath, shoulders. And just letting that be as it is. Sometimes letting something be means that it lets go. Again, without agenda. Notice any moments of release. Feel them out. And notice the quality of energy that's needed to simply be aware. What happens when we just relax into awareness? Relax our ideas, our views, and thoughts about what we should be doing and what should be happening. It's enough simply to be aware and to know that we're aware. And not looking to name what you're aware of, but simply feel into it. Direct experience of sensations, sounds, temperature, movement. So just pausing for a moment just to see what comes. Anything that you noticed that caught your interest, surprised you. And just clocking that before we move into the next re-exercise. And now perhaps just tuning in to sounds around. Sounds inside the room that you're in, or inside your own body. And sounds outside. And remembering the quality of energy or effort from the previous exercise. Relax into hearing, relax into knowing sound. And notice any preferences you have for different sounds. Perhaps some you like. Sound of the rain, sound of birds. With some, there might be the idea this shouldn't be here, this shouldn't be happening. Traffic, power tools, or stomach gurgles. And so just notice the tendency of the mind to like and dislike experiences, to make judgments. Let's see how at times perhaps the quality of the awareness can be free. It can observe these likes and dislikes, but not be so caught up in them. Can you feel the difference when our mind is listening to when it's hearing? Often with hearing, the focus is quite broad. The amount of energy required is less. Listening, hearing. Just playing with these two modes. Sometimes with listening mode, there can be a sense of anticipating or waiting for the sound to happen again. And that can bring a certain amount of tension into the mind. We're looking for a balance of relaxation and attentiveness. Being present, but with a lot of ease. You might notice sometimes the mind reaches out towards sound. And then you might perhaps try reframing the experience by letting the sound come to you. Receiving sound, opening to sound. See if it's possible to put less emphasis on what you're knowing, what the sound is. And more emphasis on knowing that hearing is happening. Sounds are being known. And so just pausing, what did you notice? And there's no right or wrong here. Where was the interest? Moments of being aware of what was happening. And there's just a few minutes here where several people, have some people speaking, if you'd like to say something about your experience. And it can be very simple, just a moment or two of where you just felt perhaps quite present, or that something caught your interest. And then after this, we'll have a short break. So you can just unmute yourself, and we'll hope there isn't unmuted mayhem. I'm sure Vajradevi will keep us in line. Okay, who's there?
Doreen.
Doreen, great.
While I was looking, just staring out of the window, not really observing anything, it started to snow, and just watching the snowflakes just as they dropped, it was a remarkable feeling of just almost feeling you were part of that falling to the ground and disappearing and falling and disappearing. It was lovely.
Yeah, sounds like you were very present, but in a quite a delicate sort of, in a way it sounds like your mind was sort of matching the delicacy of what you were.
Yes.
Observing.
Thank you.
Lovely. Anyone else? Sorry? Tim.
Yes, I was overwhelmed by a distracting noise of whether it's raining where you are or whether it's pigeons on your roof. And I I'm trying to live with it, and then I had to turn my volume down so I could just hear your voice, but put that in the background. So I'm aware of the distraction of it, and then I was aware what I was doing, that I was going away from it, so I turned my volume up again. So I'm trying to live with it. And then suddenly it stopped for just 2 seconds, and then it came back again. So
yeah,
I don't know, but I don't know what to make of my experience there.
yeah, okay. So I'll just suggest something in that distraction, in that framing of the sound as a distraction. Sometimes you can notice whether there's a disliking of it. That's sometimes how we can frame our distraction. It's I call it a distraction because I don't really want it to be happening. Yeah, or sometimes we call it a distraction because it's stimulating various thoughts, like, is it pigeons? Is it? I'm afraid I rather primed you for that one, didn't I? Is it snow? Is it rain? Is it pigeons? Is it squirrels? Yeah. But in a way, in the practice, any object will do. Anything that the mind, in a way, we're just using the different things that are happening in experience. If you like, they're all neutral. They're all just happenings in experience. And we can just be aware of whatever is happening. But often the mind doesn't really accept that. It doesn't accept it. It does make sort of judgments or about what should or shouldn't be happening, and that can be very interesting. And it sounds like it was in that sort of area.
Oh yes,
yeah.
oh yes, it was.
Yeah, so it's just about noting, okay, so the mind is making judgments. The mind is, okay, can I settle back again, and see what happens each moment afresh.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for talking. Anyone else? I appreciate this is a big ask. Great, Shakya Jasa. Thank you.
I wonder if you could say something about being mindful of sleepiness.
Sure.
I keep going, drifting off.
Yeah. Did you have your eyes open or closed?
Closed.
Closed. Yeah. So there's many things I could say, but one, it can be helpful to have your eyes open, and sometimes we can have the idea that we're not meditating properly if our eyes are closed, but actually it's quite possible to be aware while the eyes are open. Sometimes when sleepiness is very strong, that feels too much like we're fighting with what's happening. The desire to close the eyes is very strong. So yeah, I would say don't keep the eyes open if there's that sort of strength of resistance. But yeah, it's fine to have the eyes open and soft, but keep recognizing what the experience is like. Oh, this is sleepiness happening. What's that like? What's happening right now in the body, in the mind? So if you like, you're turning a little bit of curiosity onto that experience. I mean, that's what we're looking to do with whatever the experience is, some sort of interest or curiosity. And and you're not doing that to make the sleepiness go away or to make the sounds go away or whatever. And we're not looking to try and control what's happening, but to cultivate a quality of mind that over time can be with whatever's happening. So it may be that at some point your quality of awareness becomes stronger than the sleepiness in the mind. It may not be this sit, it may not be this week, it might be next week. But if you like, we're cultivating certain qualities that are able to be with what's happening, and what's happening is the less important part of the equation. Yeah.
So cultivating the qualities is most important.
Yeah. So can I be aware of this particular mind state, this particular object, and perhaps keep remembering, keep reminding myself, can I be aware in this moment of what's happening? I mean, there's other things that we can do, and in a way, opening the eyes is already it's an active thing that we're doing. We can do other things like standing up, but I'd say in terms of strengthening the mindfulness muscle, it's using that as the first sort of strategy, really. Can I be aware of what's happening again and again and again? Yeah.
I think something happened early this morning that made me very anxious. It's been cleared up now, but the anxiety is still there. And I think probably the sleepiness is a sort of escape from the anxiety.
That might be so. In a way, just be a little bit careful about making connections without it being your direct experience. It might be that at some point you have a direct understanding. This is what the sleepiness is doing. There's a direct connection between it and the anxiety. But I think often we can make those connections, but from a place of thinking about. Yeah. So just we can make those sort of provisional, have those provisional sort of thoughts, but not to attach too much significance or importance to them. But just say, okay, so there was anxiety and now there's sleepiness. There may or may not be a connection, and that's fine. That's fine. In a way, perhaps something that I would normally say later in the retreat. We can sometimes use the image of, in a way where our awareness practice is, we're sort of gathering data. We're gathering this, okay, so this is happening here and this is happening here. Another image, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. So we may have a couple of bits of sort of green grass down here and a couple of bits of sky over here. But we don't try and, we can fill in the picture with our ideas, with our known ideas, our assumptions, our whatever, but we don't actually know until, if you like, awareness and other qualities like the wisdom qualities have filled in the rest of the jigsaw picture. And then there can be moments of real knowing. We really know rather than we think it might be about this. Yeah, so I'm saying this in relation to what you said, but obviously it has implications, big implications for what we do all the time. We fill in the pieces. We make assumptions about what the bigger picture is, what the full picture, but actually most of the time we don't have enough sort of present moment or present moments information to see the bigger picture. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. It's quite radical.
Yeah. So thanks for asking, because it's good to perhaps bring that out, even though, as I say, it's not something I'd usually sort of throw at you in the first session. Yeah. Omila, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah?
When I open my eyes and look into the window, and the snow falling is settling on Buddha's head. That's how I noticed first, and then on the grass and dropping on slabs, and it's just melted. Just go away. So what's the meaning? That's what I was looking for a while. Then I look at the sky. The sky is a dull, but it's the same color. It's not a different, no cloud, nothing. It's a clear. This I say, and starting my mind going, oh, next door, not cutting trees, and it's getting bigger and all going, and my eyes getting tired. So I close my eyes and relax, and then all around bright light circle coming on my middle of the eyebrow, And it's really light and sun, and now I'm feeling very light and relaxed.
Okay, lovely.
It's
Good, thank you. So just to say that what we were doing with sounds, in terms of, I talked about, so there's that possibility of reaching out towards a sort of mental reaching out to sounds, or staying settled back with sounds. Of course, we do it with the other senses too, so we can reach out to sights, and that can, I think you said something about the eyes getting quite tired. That can be quite tiring and make the eyes feel a little bit tense. So when we're practicing being aware while seeing, it's really important that the eyes are quite soft, sort of soft and relaxed. So there isn't a sense of reaching out to experience, but of, as I said, with sound, of receiving what's being seen, receiving the sights. And then that's often not only a way of being with what's happening that's more receptive and relaxed, but it also it enables you to sort of stay closer to the rest of experience. It enables it's sort of closer to home in a particular sort of way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a, thanks for that. That was great. So we're going to have a quick break. So 10 minutes. So see what you can manage in 10 minutes. Do feel free to bring a drink back if it's a bit short. It probably will on the whole be just 10 minutes because yeah, we just got 2 hours. And then we'll have about 20 minutes, just short sits before lunchtime or before you go to bed, or depending where you are. Okay. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes before we break for these time zones are doing my head in. Before we break, I was saying to Vajradevi this morning, it's quite interesting, language, which is to say concepts, cannot really deal with multiple time zones. You can't really be accurate without, you know, language is used to sort of we come from our own perspective. We come from this sort of self perspective, and actually trying to come from multiple perspectives is not really possible with language. So that was quite interesting to realize. So wherever you are, however you are, so as I said, you may still have your tea with you, and that's fine. We're going to be aware of different senses, including tasting. So I'll just say a couple of things at the beginning of the first few minutes of this sit, and then just leave you to sit. And then at the end, I've just got a few words from John Steinbeck. But the starting point is always just as you are, how you are. in a very natural way. Time can give us certain ideas about making the most of it, getting down to it. We've only got this much time. But when the invitation is to be aware in as many moments as possible, then we're not ascribing more value to particular moments. Each moment, as Joseph Goldstein would say, each moment is of equal value. And what we're looking to prioritize in the moment is the knowing, the mind that's aware. And it's aware of different sense objects, sights and sounds, tactile sensations, tastes, smells. And there'll be mental objects and the feel of the mind. And the feel of awareness. How does that knowing quality feel? And we're not looking for an answer here, but just pointing in a direction of knowing as a felt quality. And knowing, being aware from this settled back, relaxed and open perspective. as sometimes happens, a moment settled and hovered and remained for much more than a moment. And sound stopped and movement stopped for much, much more than a moment.